Hello and welcome to Niall By Fire. I'm your host and spiritual guinea pig, Niall, and I welcome you on board this crazy roller coaster that is life, although we both know you're already on it. Liminal safe space for introspection and diary of spiritual journeying, this podcast explores the mystical, the magical, the obscure, and the downright weird through putting in the time and the work, and through practice. Niall By Fire is all about unpacking spirituality in the modern world in order to understand what kind of healing and new perspectives can be found within. And oh yeah, thanks for listening.
Okay, Niall. It's been such a long time that I was speaking to myself. It's been a long time that I've been trying to record this bloody podcast. And now I feel finally like I've reached the time where I'm ready to start talking about it again. A bit of a roller coaster ride the last couple of weeks. And I hate to start off a new podcast with saying, oh my God, yeah, life is so crazy. But the thing is, like, life is crazy. We all know it. And it's, you know, that there are high moments, there are low moments, etc. Recently, I applied for a PhD. It completely flipped my life on its head because I guess to some degree I was looking for some kind of an escape. And then this was an opportunity basically to combine all of the stuff that I've been thinking about and working on and all of the stuff that I'm interested in into, you know, also markers of my identity and stuff like that, into one simple, I mean, in air quotes, a package. In a way, you know, PhDs are not easy, but by virtue of doing a PhD, it's kind of taking the easy route in a sense that things are mapped out for you then. I think that my life so far has really been non-linear. And as such, I think I need to start trying to create something that is non-linear to basically reflect the way that, you know, like I'm wired, one, and also the way that my life has just been. Instead of trying to go down like a very much predefined route, life is full of twists and turns. Life meanders like fuck. Life is all over the place, especially mine. And you know, let's go for something a bit more like that. Anyway, a little preamble to start. My name is Niall. I have ADHD. I'm a magical practitioner. I am a perpetual student in the school of life. I love to study and I love spirituality and spiritual practices. Due to my ADHD, I find it incredibly hard to pick something and stick with it. A little bit about how I got here or how I was interested in actually creating something like this. My mother had a huge impact on my traumas. Sorry. No, on my desire to explore spirituality with a broad brush. She is a Christian. She's a Seventh-day Adventist Christian.
Wow.
Seventh-day Adventist Christians are a bit more on the Orthodox spectrum. They like to follow a lot of what the Bible preaches to the word. I mean, something I always wondered about that is, to what extent can you follow something that is so open to interpretation to the word? But that said, you know, a little key on some of the practices that they have or they uphold. They don't eat shellfish, they don't eat pork. So, you know, following similar rules to Muslims, to Jews. They go to church basically on a Saturday being the original seventh day before it was changed to Sunday. I'm not going to get into that now. In any case, my mother always had a huge problem with anything that she deemed to be unrelated to God and Jesus and the salvation that these two figures can, you know, and the word of God, for instance, can bring into your life. And I think for me, it's like, you say, don't push the red button, and I see it, and I'm like, absolutely going to push this button until the cows come home. I was fascinated by all like occult material, alternative forms of spirituality, psychic abilities, the supernatural, all of this kind of like little bit spooky, mysterious stuff. I guess there's something sexy about that. What can I say? Following the word of God by the book to the word is not particularly sexy because it feels in like, this is the way that you should be living your life. And if you're not living your life like this, well, bitch, you're going to suffer. And I think other forms of spirituality, they don't necessarily have this sense of like punishment or shame around following the rules.
All right.
Religion doesn't always make sense and often can be quite contradictory. So there was this big othering of spiritual practices that were not part of Seventh-day Adventist tradition. And so I felt a bit like I had to conceal my interest in, the occult and magic, or run the risk that I was personally deemed unholy. A little bit of information about me. I am not straight. Actually, I consider myself queer, but it's a bit redundant to kind of want to box myself into somewhere. I'm not straight, and that was already problematic. Now, if I'm not straight and then I'm like practicing some kind of pagan rituals or something, honestly, even worse. So let's just avoid having to go through this whole conversation about defending my exploration of spirituality in general. Little story. I refer to it as one of history's most painful disappearing acts, which was my brother and I, the cursed. Let me just explain. My younger brother and I, at some point we were collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Now it just became part of our life. We got a bit older and we were still kind of collecting cards and playing. And at some point, I think we were interested in just like playing again to create a deck and play each other. So we were searching around the house for these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, literally everywhere, like not being able to find them. We asked our parents, basically, have you seen these Yu-Gi-Oh cards? And nobody had anything to say about it, right? It turns out that my mother just got rid of them. Like they were gone. Eventually that came out later, but all of this money spent on these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, which we were really like so passionate about. We probably had around 1,000 plus. And then just gone. I'm like, that was my pocket money. And I spent it on something that I thought was legit. And then you deemed it unholy. And then it was just gone. In any case, something that I find interesting about this idea of demonizing Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I mean, it's an interesting game in a sense because you are really working with spiritual and archetypal figures, things that are classically referred to as demons, for instance, in the Christian tradition. But also Japanese spirits, yokai, they're called, often make an appearance, or, things from Japanese mythology often make an appearance on these cards. So if tarot, for instance, represent major archetype, and there is some kind of a sense of power in that, well, there's no reason that Yu-Gi-Oh cards can't also represent some kind of mystical forces, energies, etc., etc. So I don't necessarily blame her, but that was really that was cruel. At least I want a refund.
All right.
Another one of the major reasons that I wanted to do a podcast like this is that last year, at some point, I took part in a silent retreat called the Vipassana, and this is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. You cannot really bring a lot of materials in. Well, the aim is basically to focus on the meditation day and night. So you can't write notes. You can't speak to people. What I want to say about Vipassana is it was really an awakening moment to the fact that there is way more out there than what I've come to believe. And the way to actually start to access this stuff is to actually spend some time on your own or spend some time reflecting. 10 days in my own company was excruciating. It was so difficult. Your brain is not necessarily your best friend and can sometimes feel like it's working against you by virtue of kind of trying to distract you with all of these ideas or thoughts or things or reflections. They divide sensations basically that one experiences into two categories. Well, three technically, but the two main categories are spending time in the past in the presence of memories or stories or history, and spending time in the future in the form of fantasies, things that incarnate the imagination. And none of these are in the present. And actually the present is where we spend the most time. Being in the present is naturally really difficult, and one of the difficulties that I had during this process is facing all of the demons, that I have. For instance, having ADHD and being incredibly impatient or impulsive, and that leading to me getting distracted and then having to sit there and, come back to a place where I'm still again, just only to get distracted 2 seconds later and then have to bring myself back. Honestly, really powerful skills I think you cultivate in these kind of classes or these kind of experiences. But when I finished this, I kind of felt like maybe meditation is not necessarily the answer. But meditation is definitely one of the ways to get to a place that I would like to be, which is, a bit more of a sense of self-awareness, a bit more of a sense of a wider perspective or a more holistic understanding of what life is. One of the amazing things that I experienced during that time is I'm not particularly visual. I don't have a particularly visual imagination. And during that time, closing my eyes and just meditating for long periods in the day, there was visuals that came to me. Once you start to focus and tune down some of the other distractions that you go through, then there's all sorts of things that can start to manifest.
Wow.
One of the weird experiences I had during this time was that I spent some time trying to explore my breathing or my airways, but from the inside. And I had this whole fantasy of this meeting a red blood cell inside of my airways, who for some reason kind of felt like had a bit of the energy of an old man and was wearing this hat. And he was kind of giving me a tour of my airways, saying, okay, this is like where you get to the brain and this is where the air comes in and out and all this stuff. Honestly, fascinating. So this process with Vipassana kickstarted a journey of discovery basically into the capacities of the human mind and what we can kind of learn from spiritual practices. There's nothing more powerful than the mind. It's amazing what it can do. And especially when you give it some space and, I don't know, you're able to focus for a little bit. It's incredible things that you can see. I'm originally from London and I live here in Brussels. And they have this magic course, which is kind of like an association or not for profit. It's amazing, honestly. At the moment, we're looking into planetary energies and we really spend some time with the planetary bodies, invoking their energies and just understanding what are the differences between them. One of the major takeaways for me was that magic is real in a sense that once you're open to believing that there's more, everything can become magic. So the podcast concept, as I said, I've struggled with commitment. It's not going to be very linear. It's going to be chaotic as fuck. I'm chaotic as fuck. If you don't like that, I'm actually really, that's unfortunate. If you love it, I mean, I hope that I can be engaging. I think that's what I'm going for. I hope that you will grow to love it, basically. Anyway, my podcast concept. So, there are on YouTube or on these different platforms, there are plenty of people that are doing kind of unboxing videos or product review videos. For me, these are material pursuits. There's something great about, if I want to get a new camera and somebody has already seen this camera, great. But there is so much more out there than what money can buy and the material world. So I wanted to create something where instead of reviewing some material, I'm reviewing instead something that is a bit more ethereal or untethered to planet Earth. Concretely, this podcast intends to serve as both a diary of spiritual practice and my spiritual journey, but also as a directory of spiritual practices or spiritual, magical, mystical practices, occult practices, etc. Meaning, I'm going to share exercises in each episode that I'm doing over a certain period of time. Maybe a little bit of light theory from time to time about the exercises as well, or about the philosophy behind the exercises. And then I will go away and I'm going to practice it as fervently as I possibly can. And then when I come back with the next episode, then I'm going to give some kind of explanation of what did I learn, who might it be good for, what can we potentially gain doing this, and also trying to help you find out what may work for you. I mean, I'm curious as fuck, as you can probably tell by me doing this kind of crazy podcast. There's so much to learn about life, especially, when you start to take things seriously. I want to talk a little bit about what is magic, just because I think that's an interesting base for this whole podcast. And for me, I think magic is really it's a sense of possibility, a combination of one's intentions, attention to something or focus, and also the direction of one's intentions or energy. And that's basically as simple as it is.
All right.
I don't necessarily think that magic is consistent. Like, it's not something that, you can run the same test 10 times and you're going to get the same result. Like, it requires effort. Magic is not necessarily about results in a capitalistic sense. It's really about the journey, and it's about being present with yourself, and it's about developing a sense of self-awareness. But more so, the other question is, why am I interested in doing this? What is that really about? And then magic starts to feel a bit more like psychology or a bit more like philosophy. Magic is not necessarily about obtaining the exact result under the same conditions. It's about observing. It's not about dogma. It's about expression. It's a creative process. Again, it's not exhaustive or restrictive. It's all about possibility. And something I find really amazing about magic, but really about the human condition, I guess, is that so much of what we end up doing is about the way that we're socialized, and all of that is based on belief or ideology. The interesting thing about belief and ideology is you can share it. Like, I can give somebody or open somebody up to an entire universe of new ways of thinking about something. The question then becomes, am I open to actually considering that as something that is a possibility? Or am I closed, in which case I'm not necessarily going to see the benefit of it? What do I ultimately hope to get through this whole podcast thing? I mean, I talked about it a little bit earlier, and I think that it's really not for me about a result or about obtaining an answer that is definitive and that can explain away everything, all of the mysteries of life. It's about understanding, why am I interested in these mysteries? What can I learn if I start to explore these mysteries? Coming to terms with the fact that the journey is the significant part. The journey is the me being present, doing whatever I'm doing. And it's not me being so worried about whatever the outcome is. Is a flying goat going to actually fly into my window and impact my dreams? Yes or no? It's not about that. It's about how can we encourage that to happen? How can we explore whether the possibility of that happening? Do I have to physically see that for that to be real? These kind of questions.
Wow.
Ultimately, I just want to learn more about myself and hopefully contribute to you, my listeners, understanding of yours or your own spiritual journeys or journeys towards whatever it is that you want to get. Finally, it's totally experimental. I'm still kind of figuring out my platforms. I'm just figuring this out. We all are, that's the point. It's the journey. But I'd like to say that I'm very much open to suggestions, to critiques, to comments, to advice, to recommendations. Share with me your books, share with me your spiritual practices, share with me whatever you're working on, or just hit me up for a chat and we can chat about existentialism, whatever you want. Okay, so how to contact me? You can find, Again, I'm setting up all of my socials. I'm still figuring out how to do all of that stuff. Trying to spin all of the plates that I potentially have the energy for, which are not really that many at the end of the day. In any case, you can find me on Patreon at Trial by Firecast or patreon.com/Trial by Firecast. And you can find me on Instagram at the same name, which is Trial by Firecast. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so excited for this journey, and I'm excited for you potentially to join me on this journey as well. I look forward to actually getting started because this, introductions are, it's so gross to be who are you and why should I care about you? And then I'm kind of setting myself, this is not a job interview, I'm here to have a good time, hopefully share some interesting things, open my own eyes as well as hopefully open the eyes of other people. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week for the real deal. I say next week, but I really mean just for the next episode. Anyway, thanks. Bye.